watch the currents coming in, and I went to exactly where these little inlets where the currents are moving. I walked straight down and picked it up. And that's the way you do it, because it's following the currents. And this, a skeptic would say, oh yeah, this is from, Starbucks in Seattle or something. But no, this is very heavy. I don't know, it might be porcelain, but it's old. It's got the little antique cracks on it, and it's got lots of barnacles on it.
And once I find something from the old days embedded in the sediment down there, it's a handmade knife out of elk antler and a file. Killer whale tooth. This is my 2.5 million year old mammoth tooth. A carved slingshot, an eagle. And this is a Corning World War II shark fin soup factory float. Smoke bombs, Coast Guard smoke bombs, man overboard buoys, life rings, life jackets, flares. This is the container spills you might have heard about. Nike shoes, that was Avia tennis shoes. This is a gray whale skull. Everything that floats up on the beach.
Flotsam is the stuff that washes up on a beach and has floated from somewhere else. It's floating on the currents and it washes up on the beach. Jetsam is whatever has been jettisoned out of a vessel. So let's say, some guy 4,000 years ago in a canoe jettisoned a coconut shell. That is jetsam by virtue of the fact that it was jettisoned. It then becomes flotsam and then washes ashore.
Every flotsam, everything that floats in the ocean and everything that's around me has a different windage. It sticks out of the water to varying degrees, and depending on that exposure to the wind, will push things faster.
The red one shows up from Okinawa. The next year, the yellow one shows up, and they're within 4 miles of each other from Okinawa. When we find out that both of these, when they had a typhoon, they know the day of the typhoon, and then the day of that we found it on our beach was both less than a year. Both years. So Taiwan to here in 9 or 10 months each time. So that's how we knew that after that tsunami we would be finding things that floated, which talks about windage. If it floats way high out of the water with that sail, because these were anchored, it stuck out of the water so much that wind speed got it here really fast.
This is a nice piece of styrofoam, and it will float with just a little bit under the water. Boy, do the winds sail this fast. And this kind of thing can go across the Pacific Ocean in about 25 miles per day, 7 months.
We had a tsunami in March, and if large objects can cross the ocean that fast, when does that mean? October of 2011. So I went out on a limb and I said, well, I think there's stuff going to be here October of 11. And sure enough, we started getting stuff.
My name is Kurt Ebbesmeyer. I'm an oceanographer, 40 years experience. I'm a water chaser. I chase everything that's in the ocean. I wrote a book with Eric Scigliano, Flotsametrics in the Floating World, and I publish this newsletter quarterly, and it ironically happens to be about the thing we're talking about, which is the first arrival of tsunami debris in the United States and America, and it's October of 2011.
I teach biological invasions, and one of the lectures is to say things do not drift across the oceans. They just don't do that. It doesn't happen. And there was this float that was covered with exactly what I said could never happen. And I couldn't believe it.
All the debris that we've been able to track so far has come from just 3 prefectures. Tohoku, and I believe it's about the size of Connecticut. Here's Japan right there. Here's Tohoku. Debris comes right across there from about Kodiak all the way down to Cape Mendocino and comes out to Hawaii. And there's the Great Garbage Patch.
It's only when the west wind blows it'll blow that out of that patch. So if it's a slow transition, then we'll get a couple days of west wind where it'll blow it out of the patch that's out there and onto our beach. I'm Matt Mulvey from Seaview, Washington, and there's 25-30 miles of beach for me to drive every morning if I want to. Good beachcombing area. But I've got a book on Japanese glass floats that they're talking about the patch when it was written in the 60s. But it's all beachcombing in 67. They got a chapter right on that, the patch.
This is all pre-tsunami debris, so this kind of shows how a lot of things and people that find things on the beach are not automatically going to mean that they're tsunami debris. Cigarettes from Taiwan, Great Wall of China. That's your 7-Up. A lot of people always say that it's a bag of rice because it's from China, but this is a bag that would hold 6 bags of laundry detergent. And a nice Chinese lady came in that interpreted all of it to me and said that this says 1 small cup makes clothes come clean. And it's about 5 o'clock. Yeah, it's high tide. That's the best time for beachcombing. I looked at the tide clock when I was in the center. It looked straight up at high tide. I said, how lucky is that? Right up at high tide. Because then as it starts receding on us, we'll have more stuff exposed on the way back also. It'll be leaving right behind us. Usually these are wrapped with ribbons that hold that big tarp on them. It's amazing. This is your Japanese tsunami float right here. Look at the background you have there.
I came from Volcano on the Big Island of Hawaii just for the beach fair, because I do this every year. I can't stand not to come. Even if I can't afford it, I still come. I just have met so many friends here, really neat people who have the same interests. You hear such interesting things here, and people bring the most interesting little things they found. Some, like what I got this morning, is an unmentionable thing. But anyway. Show it to you later. I've been beachcombing since I was a little kid. My first memory in life is of beachcombing. When I was probably not 3 years old, I was looking for moonstones in Southern California with my dad with a flashlight at night. That's my first memory ever in life, so I was destined to be a beach rat.
Noni found this little sandal, kid's sandal in the Big Island. And a little girl and a cat, and it's her name written here. So whenever kids go into classrooms in Japan, they have to leave their sandals outside. And they got to write their name so they can get their sandal back. So this washed up at Hawaii. My job is to figure out who the little girl is. It's one of my next missions. So I'm going to scan this, photograph it very carefully, and send it down to Kyoto News, and hopefully they can track down the little girl.
You hope it's a living child, but if not, it would still mean something to the family if they still exist.
1 in a million. And that's just a rough guess, but most debris cannot be traced. Here's John Anderson with a volleyball he found. It was covered with writing. one of the coolest finds, but we haven't been able to trace it so far. So there's good news and there's bad news. If you find something and you can't trace it, well, that tugs at your heart.
Well, there are some markings on some of them, and they had pictures of them floating in the ocean, pictures from a freighter with these floating around with all the other debris, lots of them.
Now, this is a Rosetta Stone picture by the U.S. Navy. It was taken right off the coast of Japan shortly after the tsunami. Notice what's here is the preview of everything to come.
Everything floats differently. Left and right shoes go to different places. The ocean, you give the ocean 5,000 miles and 7 months to sort things out. And before you know it, there's a sequence to everything. First you have big black floats like this and styrofoam, and then you might have soccer balls.
It has probably I'm sure it's Japanese characters here. And why I say that, it says Japan Volleyball Association. That's something I've never seen anything like this washing up on the beach.
And Alicia found this basketball, and it says Kisanuma Middle School. And here are the Baxters, and they found a volleyball and a soccer ball on Middleton Island. They also found this restaurant sign.
And she was so inspired that somebody found the restaurant sign that had the name of her late husband. She was inspired to reopen a restaurant. These objects have incredible significance.
Now, this is a new mystery. It turned out this hard hat was apparently from the same prefecture as the basketball. But we haven't traced it to the person. We think it's employee number 61.
It's probably from Japan, but it may or may not be from the tsunami debris, but there's been so many oyster floats of the bigger ones that washed over, and these have come with them, so flotsam of a feather flocks together is what happens. So things travel together. So the fact that these are washing up with the big floats and they both have oyster shells indicates to me that they probably came from oyster farms that were destroyed by the tsunami.
Shizui, and it's got a little like a little cat with sunglasses. There's the sun. It's sitting up on a pedestal. It's got its tail and whiskers. And number 7A. And there was a second one found last week out there. I'm thinking that, it's probably insulation on a house one time got broken up by the tsunami.
A float washed up, and they keep calling it a dock, but it's not a dock. A dock has pilings and things like that. This is a float, and so it was floating, and it was a very, very well-made float. And so the Japanese construction is very meticulous, very, very high standards.
This was one of 4 docks that was put into service, I think, in 2007. Very, very heavy floating docks. Fishermen, this is an area that does a lot of squid fishing and in the summer surf clam.
In Newport, locals called it the Tsunami Dock. It had drifted 7,300 kilometers from Misawa City in Aomori Prefecture, all the way to the US.
And the interesting thing about this thing is covered with stainless steel fittings. It's extremely well made, and the reason I'm making that point is that this object even is 66 feet long, 19 feet wide, 7 feet tall, probably stood on end in the tsunami. And the fittings were ripped off of it, and it didn't sink. It's so well made. When this float washed up on the shore, it wasn't planned. Okay, and so there was supposed to be a debris program, and that the way people thought of debris was that they would haul it away or a disposal problem. And it wasn't until June 5th at about 7:30 in the morning that we ever realized, ever even considered that there could be introduced species with this. This community that was on this float, this island that came across from the Asian shores, was intact. And many species must have died, and we still don't know what those are, and we're still trying to identify the species. But our initial guess was that there could be 30 species on there. And then our initial guess was that there could be 50 species on there. And now our initial guess is that there's at least 90 species on there, and counting.
Here they are, they steam cleaned everything off. And I was just wondering, well, why don't we use it? Why destroy a perfectly good pontoon? One washed up in Japan, one at Agate Beach, one up here at Mosquito Creek, and there was another one that washed down to Hawaii. But notice that 3 actually drifted together. So if you're a fisherman out there and you see one, the question is, where are the others?
This group of fishermen, about 35 of them, had gotten their boats out to sea before the tsunami hit, because that's a safer place to be. And in the middle of the night, as they were floating with their engines turned off because they didn't want to entangle the propellers in debris, which was all around, this dock looms out of the darkness. And they were very excited because these docks were very important to them. And they thought, well, maybe this one fisherman thought he could tie up to it, which he did, and potentially tow it back and salvage it. But this dock, as large as their fishing boats are, this dock, I can't remember what the weight is, but it's very, very heavy, much heavier than the fishing boat. So he realized there was really nothing he could do, and they notified the Coast Guard and were hopeful that maybe they could be salvaged, but he set it adrift, and that was the last they saw of it.
Henderson decided to go to Misawa to learn more about tsunami rubble.
And before there were 4 like this. And there still are. They had these people ready for me to talk to, and they were so forthcoming, and their stories were so compelling. That's what I wanted to do with the article, was give readers in Oregon a broader sense of what that dock represented in human terms. To me, the bigger point for Oregonians was, notice that this is from a tsunami. We are going to have a tsunami too someday. What of our stuff, what of our lives will be washing out to sea? This demonstrates how we're connected as one, species, and nature connects us through something like a tsunami. We're getting the property coming from, our fellow humans from afar.
And suppose that you'd lost several members of your family in the house that washed away. Would you like it called debris?
put it into a big press, a big sheet of plastic, and it goes, boom, and then they open it up like a big waffle iron, and out pop all the sandals, and they throw this over the side.
Chief of the beach!
The beach king.